Hey everyone, welcome to Business Growth Talks. Today we have Shane Mishler, where he shares his insights into the innovative world of IT management. Join us as Shane, as the dynamic CEO of SD Tech, shares his unique story and his unique journey of expanding and thriving in business in San Antonio, Texas. Blending his artistic background with a profound understanding of business operations, Shane offers a fresh perspective on scaling and managing a successful enterprise. In this episode, he delves into the strategies that tripled SD Tech revenue, emphasizing the importance of strong partnerships, effective standardization of process, and engineering approach to problem solving. Discover how an artistic vision can revolutionize business tactics, learn the value of leveraging relationships for growth, and gain insights into overcoming the challenges of continuous improvement. Shane's wisdom goes beyond profitability. It's about leaving a lasting legacy and making a positive impact. So if you are enjoying this, please do hit thumbs up, please do subscribe and hit the bell icon, and we will go into a deeper story about the empowering story of Shane Mishler and the practical advice of driving business success in an ever-evolving world of IT management. Today we have Shane Mishler, who is the CEO of SD Tech, which is his leadership role into design and implementing business strategies, plans, and processes. SD Tech is an IT management service provider helping clients with a wide range of IT and business and phone system services. During Shane's tenure, the company revenue has tripled with an active client portfolio of over 200 companies. Shane's role is varied, including responsibilities in investments, clients, strategic franchise partners, and expansion activities. Shane lives in San Antonio, Texas. If you are enjoying this content, please do consider subscribing. You will not miss an episode, and you can go to businessgrowthtalks.com for more info on the show. Hello, Shane. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, Mark. Thank you so much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. We're going to talk about you, talk about your business, talk about how you've grown your business, and the tripling of revenue is super impressive. And just before we came on, we said how your relationship with your CEO has been super strong and has been part of your journey and part of the success of the business. So we will definitely delve into that. So really looking forward to this. The first question, as always, is what does a business mindset mean to you?
Mark, I think that's a really interesting question because uh, business mindset doesn't actually mean much to me.
Okay.
It really doesn't. I think that for a lot of individuals, what you're going to find is that a lot of people have two different mindsets that they operate on daily. They have their home mindset, their personal or downtime mindset, and then a professional mindset, right? So the vast majority of people, it's once I'm getting ready in the morning to head to work, I switch out of my personal mindset and into a professional mindset. I think that the majority of people would liken professional mindset and business mindset into a very similar area.
Yeah.
But for me, business mindset is a strange idea because that's where I exist all the time. Outside of my workday, outside of SD Tech, I play video games. I go to concerts. I love movies. Um, really big into enjoying my life. And one of the things I've known about myself since I was a teenager is anytime I find something that I really enjoy, I end up looking at it and going, how did somebody create this product that I love, that I'm passionate about, that I really enjoy? How are they managing to make money off of this? What is sustainable for them? So the concerts I enjoy going to, I like heavier music, and it's typically not very profitable for a band. You have 5 individuals who go and do a show. They're making maybe $1,000 a show for a smaller band, and then they play their show. They have to travel to another city. And in my head, I've never done this before, but I'm working through the details of that. 5 individual salaries, the cost of gas, the cost of stagehands, people breaking things down, people building it back up, and then unexpected expenses pop. My brain just works through these things when I'm enjoying myself in my downtime. It's just how it works when I am at a race event. I enjoy various racing, motorcycles, cars, F1. I think about, how do these professional drivers, where does their salary come from? These guys are driving really expensive cars. It's really costly to maintain. And it's all ad revenue for the most part, and the way they bring it in. And it's just like the vast majority of other business models. So a business mindset to me, it's not something you typically turn on or off. I think if you're turning it on or off, you're probably talking more about a professional mindset. I think a business mindset is looking at things, whether it's naturally or intentionally, and breaking them down and asking yourself the basic question: how is a person, individual, or company bringing this service and then making money off of it?
So it's interesting you say that, because the interesting bit about working, because it sounds like you're like you've almost got like an engineering sort of mentality, trying to understand how things work and break them down into components. What often I get from that question is very entrepreneurial. So it's all an entrepreneurial mindset. You're thinking about growing, how to increase profitability. It's a growth mindset. But actually, what you're doing is, and engineers, that people that I know and the people that I've listened to and watched over the years, engineers take a while to actually get into a business mindset. But once they get it, or an entrepreneurial mindset, once they get it, they're superb at it, because they can break down into all of the components and then build it up to be successful. Would you say you've got an engineering mindset?
I would. I was in my mid 20s when I stopped, and somebody had asked me a question. It was one of my mentors at the time, and he had asked me a question, and I explained my answer, and then he was like, "Why did you think about things that way?" And I was like, "I usually start from a focal point and then work backwards, and I just break things down and try and understand the layers." And he was like, "Did you ever consider getting into engineering?" And I was like, "No, I don't even know where I would begin. That's not my background, is in the arts. I love
Right.
art. I love music. I liked theater. And typically, a person who's got an artistic background, not usually geared towards engineering." So him and I had a series of probably over 3 months of conversations, and he really helped me understand how my own brain worked. And yeah, now I'm very comfortable saying I have an engineering mindset. I just never realized it before that time.
Oh, it's a shame. You could have had a different career path. But anyway,
Ah, I'm very happy
that's
now. So
very.
I like where I've gotten. Yeah, so it's okay.
Tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
One thing that reflects on who I am today from my upbringing: I'm the oldest of 8 kids. My youngest brother and sister, who are twins, are 12 years younger than I am. Now, I want you to stop for a second. Think about the math there. There's 8 kids,
It was
12-year
quick.
span. Yeah, it was really quick. By the time I was 15, I had 7 brothers and sisters, the youngest being 3 years old. And my mom was single. She was a single mom most of the time. She worked between 2 to 3 part-time jobs. Money was very tight. And I was the oldest. I was expected to help manage the household. And there were things that happened when I was a teenager that I never would have expected to impact who I am today. But the reality is, I learned how to work with 7 very different personalities.
Mm.
We had to learn to work together. We weren't being paid. That's usually most people's motivation. And I learned a lot about crisis management and personality management. And I think that really helped me throughout all of my professional career.
Do you think, being the oldest, there's a responsibility that you have of looking after, being available, or being a sort of, to an extent, some sort of mentoring or like role there? Do you think, being the oldest, do you think that has impacted how you've run businesses and been involved in business?
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. I would love to say that all of the lessons that I learned when from my teenage years were all greatly positive. They weren't. There was a ton of failure. There was attempting to be a good mentor, and then I was a teenager, and it was a crazy household. So I was fortunate enough to get a lot of my errors out of the way when I was young. and then learn from them throughout my adulthood. But there's some lessons that I hope nobody ever has to learn in their professional career. Like, young siblings typically fight. And when there's a bunch of them, the fights can get a little bit out of hand. So when my mom was at work and one of my younger brothers ends up with a broken arm, then I'm having to manage a very chaotic situation, figure out how to help get a hold of my mom, get them to the hospital. And this is in the early 90s. Cell phones weren't a thing. The internet wasn't a thing. I wasn't chatting her. So it was different. It was very different. I'm very grateful for the experiences I had, and it's definitely assisted me in my professional career.
And the other thing you said that was interesting was about the different personalities that you had to deal with. So in a family of 8, there's lots of dynamics, different personalities, different responsibilities, rebelling, and I'd like to go into rebelling with you as well. But thinking about the personality side, like, how did you, if you were looking after the kids, your mum was at work that evening, how were you able to juggle all of their needs and the personalities that are needed? Some more needy, some more independent.
Not well. Right, looking back,
You're only 15.
we managed
What
to
can you
get
do?
through. We managed to get through it. There were times where I would say that there was like family activities that, to a degree, that's true. We would have maybe about half of us who would be actively playing games together, and then I would help push a few of us into handling chores. One or two of us would start working on cooking, and there were times, even back then, where I knew that what I was doing was putting some separation between us as a team, because 8 kids it's crazy. It's very chaotic. So when you can separate things a little bit and give people different objectives and goals and get them focused on something, then it would help bring a little bit of control to the chaos. And more often than not, it helped. Of course, at some point in time, one of the 8 are going to choose to rebel and stir the pot and create a mess. But we would manage, we'd get through it. And at the end of the day, it was easier because of the fact that we were family.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you for your openness and your honesty. Tell me more about SD Tech. What do they do?
So SD Tech is an MSP, managed service provider. And Mark, I don't know if you're familiar with industry, but a little over 4 years ago, when I met our CEO and founder, Wes explained to me that SD Tech was an MSP. And I looked at him and I was like, those letters mean nothing to me, man. He was like, oh, we're a managed service provider. And I was like, okay, again, what type of services are you managing to provide? Yeah, we're a managed service provider. So realistically, what we are is an IT consulting, strategizing, and implementation partner. So we work with small to medium-sized businesses, a couple of larger businesses, but our focus is on small and medium. And we come in and assist companies with managing their technology when they can't afford or have chosen not to afford having an internal IT team, which for a small company, hiring a technical mindset individual who's going to manage your technology, that may not be the best use of your money. So we come in, we look from ground up, identify what type of technology is going to be used to support this business. We help break down cost strategies and budgeting, and then we assist with implementation and the management after the fact. And that varies from company to company, but somebody like yourself running a podcast, there's a ton of technology that's behind that, right? You have your computer, your mic, if you're using some small mixing board, you have an email account at the very least, internet, and then a basic network that's supporting all of those things. And if you aren't overly tech savvy, at some point, one of those pieces, one of those components is going to fail. And if you're expecting to get on a live session with somebody, that can cause a lot of frustration. So even with somebody like you, we would partner with you, and whether it's the email, the internet, or any piece of your setup, we assist with those types of things.
So I don't mean to simplify too much, but IT support on helping small, medium-sized businesses across
Pretty
the
basic.
board. No, I'm
Across the
sorry, I
board.
just like to simplify
Yeah.
things sometimes.
No, yeah, I do too.
The one thing I would say is you were saying about all the setup. So I've got microphones, I've got cameras, I've got lighting, I've got all set up. But actually, if there is, because obviously you don't have, I don't think you've got London clients, and helping me with IT support might be a bit tricky. But if there is anyone, I've never done this before, if anyone is out there listening to this or watching this, that is an IT specialist, that they might have a job or whatever, and they want to come and help me with setup and everything like that, like updates on the laptop that I've got, please do reach out to me, DM me on LinkedIn. It'll be very interesting if anyone, because my setup is what I've done. I've never, I always, I feel quite envious. There's someone that I am friends with. He's based in Chicago, and he says to me, I've got my IT guy. He comes over, he works for a company, comes over whenever I've got something like have to update my storage or outside. He just says it's brilliant. You need to get one. And I'm like, oh God, I don't have, I'm doing this on a wing and a prayer, on research
Oh,
and Googling stuff and YouTubing stuff. So if there is anyone out there that's based in London that would like to give me like an audit, it would be amazing. Sorry,
no,
sidetrack.
you're good, Mark. Honestly, having somebody like that can be really helpful. And just so you're aware, 95% of it can actually be done remotely.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, a little bit more about SD Tech. We're based out of San Antonio, Texas, so the furthest southern tip of the United States.
Yeah.
And we have 15 employees, all based out of San Antonio. And I have clients from California to Florida, New York, all across the US.
Okay.
And I have 11 clients who are in Canada. I haven't broken into the London space yet, but technology, when things are going well, technology is amazing. And yeah, even remote support is what makes us successful.
So let's just think about this, because it's one of the questions that I like to bring up on this show is market expansion. So what was the grand plan when you came and joined of market expansion? You say you're covering all of the US, you're covering Canada as well. How did you, when you joined the company and was approaching that idea of we need to go to wider areas, what was the strategy? How did you break it down, as
That's
I'm sure you would have done?
I did. I absolutely did break it down. And in my head, it did not work the way you probably think it did. So when my first 3 months working with SD Tech, I literally shadowed our CEO day in and day out. That's all I did. I took notes. I worked maybe 10% of my time. The rest of the time, I observed, I learned, and I took notes. And during that time, I was listening to the owner, who at that point, he only had 4 other employees, and he had already broken into the far west and far east side of the United States. And he was explaining to me how he wanted to expand his market, and we wanted to get a better footprint in various areas. And my head was going, whoa, we should slow down. We should make sure that what we are doing here locally is going really well before we push further and further out. Our Wes, the founder, the CEO, he has a really interesting mindset. I know I have only met probably one or two other individuals in my life who truly have this I want to build an empire and I am
Right.
going to make it happen mindset. A lot of people, ton of people, the majority of us want to get rich, but actually having that empire mindset is different. I don't want to say we were at odds, but he definitely knew that we were polarized. He wanted to quickly expand, and I wanted to make sure that what we were doing right now was easy to support as we did expand. And it wasn't until 2 years into my role that I did become more confident. And once I became more confident, there was a really quick switch, right? So it was making sure that we were prepared for the growth, making sure that we're prepared for the expansion, because my background, I had worked with bringing on entire new wings of a business, new verticals, and I had seen where quick growth and expansion could lead to imminent failure if you weren't
Right.
actually prepared.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, we have 5 people in San Antonio, Texas, and we're taking care of all of the US. That's massive. And so I couldn't wrap my head around it at first, Mark. But then it was understanding how much of what we do is done remotely, and how it really is about making sure that during the implementation phase, that everything is done 100% effectively.
Mm.
And if you make sure that during the implementation that everything is handled with care and with strategy, then it can be handled remotely from thousands of miles away with next to no problems.
And that idea of your CEO who wants to build an empire, let's just tap into his brain now. It sounds like you guys are very close. You've worked
We're very
together for a
close.
number of years. And because I think there's, from my experience of talking to people on this show, probably 150 guests I've had on, you are right. There's people who want to be business owners, entrepreneurs, because they want the flexibility. So one of the reasons why I moved was
That's me.
flexibility. Yep. I would also like to build substantial businesses, and booking agency is growing. We're doing really well. And we've talked about exit strategy even now, because I was on a couple of shows and people are like, you need to think what an exit strategy is. And we've both come to a conclusion that it would be the business day-to-day activities are someone else's responsibilities, and we still have some involvement. But tapping into that idea, I did an interview with Brad Sugars, who is Action Coach. So a big multinational coaching company. He's been able to systemize what coaching means globally. And he is, and go listen to the episode if you're interested, he is an empire builder. It is all about system. We'll talk about systems and processes in a minute, but it's all about systemizing everything, getting more people in there, retaining clients, building the business, building. How does someone with like you just said, you want that flexibility, you want to be able to have, you might want to be rich, whatever that number is, but how does that compare and contrast with that person that wants to take over the world?
So for me, his mentality and my mentality, we feed off of one another in the best of ways, because I know that I am a fantastic leader, but I lead from behind. My hand rests upon your shoulder and I'm half a step standing behind you. I'm really good at motivating and building structure into the things that you really need to take it further. But I know that about myself. I know that I prefer working as part of a group, and it's where I do my best work. And that's not without downsides. I can work alone. I work alone quite often, but it's not my preference. It's not going to be what feeds me. When I met Wes, it was him and he had not even 4 other employees. He had 3 other employees when I met him, an administrative assistant, a technician, and then an install tech. And everybody, of course, has to wear multiple hats. It's a small business.
Yep.
And he was doing about $500,000 in revenue with 4 employees. And this is impressive to me. I was like, these are good numbers. You're providing technical support and implementation for small to medium-sized businesses, primarily in San Antonio. That's a lot of work. And so as I was working alongside him and shadowing him, he was recently married. I think he was 2 years into his marriage. His wife is also a workaholic. She's an amazing woman, but I was like, how are the two of you managing a marriage when both of you are working? She probably worked 50 to 60 hours a week, and he's working numbers that I don't even feel comfortable saying. He would be up. He was up by 8. He's usually up by about 9 in the morning and managing window appointments. He would, all of his lunches, every one of his lunches are work lunches. He's either meeting with clients or he's eating at his desk and working through his lunch. His dinners were typically the same exact way. He would break for about an hour and a half to spend time with his kids and with his wife. And then he would be back at work, and I would see him sending emails to between 2 to 4 o'clock in the morning. And then it clicked. And I was like, oh, this is how you're successful. You're successful because you never stop. You're successful because you enjoy your downtime just like anybody else does, but how you enjoy your downtime is very different than how I enjoy my downtime. And that's where I really started to see the difference in the mindset. As a leader and as a coach, one of the things that I will often tell my employees who are struggling with selling to higher level leaders is you have to remember that everybody you're talking to would typically prefer to be doing something different. And they're like, how does that make sense? And I was like, if you remind yourself that the guy you're talking to right now would probably rather be spending time with his kids, spending time with his wife, be out fishing, be out golfing, then it reminds you that they're just a person,
Mm.
just like we are. No matter how much money they have, no matter what they're doing, the majority of these individuals, they just want to enjoy their life. Wes is different. Wes, he doesn't care for vacations the way the rest of us care for vacations. He was working. Him and his wife went to Greece for their honeymoon, and he worked through his honeymoon. And for him, the taking a break from work, it's not enjoyable. So his balance looks vastly different. And that's, I believe, what really allows him to have that empire mindset. 2 years ago, we were at this big convention, and the speaker asked Wes, what does your exit strategy look like? And Wes looked at him and said, what do you mean? And he said, do you plan on eventually selling the business? Do you plan on starting another business? And he presented with a couple of options. He was like, no. And he's like, what do you mean, no? And he was like, yeah, no. There is no exit strategy. There's expansion strategies. There is what we're going to do to accumulate and grow and just further our reach and our footprint. But I have zero intention of having to have an exit strategy. And then I looked at him and I was like, man, I didn't realize that. I don't know why I didn't realize that. That seems really obvious. And then we talked quite a bit, and he has reluctantly come up with some, I don't want to say exit strategies, but exit plans in the case that something does trigger a change in his mindset. But that makes him uncomfortable.
It's interesting. I want to move on to systems and processes and how you built that. But what I understood of what you said is it's a different leadership style that that people have. So you said you stand behind someone and you guide them, go left, go right, straight on. Where someone like Wes, your CEO, is at the front pulling everyone else along. They're behind him and he's marching forward to the new market, the new expansion. Join
He
me,
is.
we go into the next level,
Yep.
sort of thing. And that's something absolutely fascinating for me, that whole leadership dynamic. And there are so many different ways to be a leader, and equally, they can equally be as valuable. So I think that's super important for us all to understand. So entrepreneurs that are listening to this, just think about that. Like, you have to be authentic to yourself. You have to work the way that works for you. But there are lots of ways of being able to be a leader. I think that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. So let's think about SD Tech, how you were able to triple revenue in the 3 years during your time. I think it's 3 years. And I want to specifically talk about how you systemized and made processes to build that business.
So the information you have is a little bit outdated.
Okay.
Thank you to my guys who are supporting me. I've been with the company now for a little bit over 4 years, and we are on track to close out this calendar year, quadrupling our revenue from where it was when I started. And a big piece of that is, as you're mentioning, thanks to standardizing processes and procedures. We've basically quadrupled our revenue, and we've tripled our employees. So our staff is 3 times the size. We're floating right around 15 employees now, whereas 4 years ago, I was brought on as an employee number 5. And of course, the goal, right, one of the goals, one of the many goals, is to continue to see our revenue move in a positive direction, but I don't want our number of employees to stay on that same multiplier, right? We want to be as efficient as possible. And if I could 10x our revenue and only 5x our employees, then that would mean that we're doing some things amazing. I don't know if that's actually realistic, but it would be amazing.
Profitability, which is
Yeah.
super important. Revenue's great. Revenue's really valuable metric, but profitability is more important.
Depending on who you're talking to.
I'm telling you, that's
and
what
for
I
the
think.
reason. Yeah. And at various times, I think the same thing. So ultimately, though, over the last 4 years, there have been various points in time where if you talked to me around a year in, I would have told you that our documentation, our standardization was not great. And then at 2 years in, I would have told you it's amazing. We've been really working on it. We're putting in a lot of effort, and we have gotten a lot of different pieces of our business standardized. And then around 2 to 2.5 years in, we felt really confident and we started venturing into franchising our business model.
Right.
And we did that. We, a little over a year ago, we successfully franchised our business model. We got everything nice and legal. And then about 6 months ago, we onboarded our first franchisee. And I felt really confident with it. The process went really smooth. We're onboarding. The onboarding is going really smooth. I feel very good. And then now he's been in his role for about 6 months, and things have been very slow. And a big piece of that is the processes and procedures that we had been focusing on. Those look great. But there's so many other things that we had unintentionally just taken for granted.
Right.
We have SD Tech has been in business for 20 plus years, and we didn't realize how much of our business was ran on tribal knowledge until we have this new individual who's separate, who's launching his own business, his own brand. And he's, I don't know how to do a lot of these things, Shane. And then I hand him essentially a stack of paper saying, these papers should be able to help govern you. And then he's going through them. He's, dude, there's a lot of stuff in here that doesn't make sense to me. So 2 years ago, I was like, we're A-okay. We're making great progress. Everything's standardized. All the documentation is there. 2 years later, my focus for the next 2 quarters is going to be spending probably 50 to 60% of my time revisiting our processes, our SOPs, and looking at them through a different lens, because there's a lot of change that needs to happen. It's difficult. How do you get yourself out of your own headspace? You come to work, you do a set of responsibilities, how to do that set of responsibilities. And so when you're creating the documentation, when you're trying to standardize these processes, if you are in your own headspace, there's going to be a lot of things that you take for granted. So you have to look at it through a totally different lens and say, does this work for somebody who has no idea?
Yeah.
And
so the whole idea of keep it simple, stupid is absolutely perfect, isn't it?
You have to be willing to make a big old kiss. You have to.
And I think that's it. So I used to do when I was working in corporate, having to write these kinds of documents, and you're absolutely right. Jargon can be a barrier. If someone doesn't have any experience within the jargon, that can be a massive barrier. Equally, making assumptions that someone's going to know what you mean by saying that, it's really difficult because people don't. And those steps, you have to think about it from someone who has zero knowledge about your business. Even if you get a franchise or you hire someone that does have the knowledge, you have to start those processes and systems as in, this person knows nothing about my business. I need to explain it. And have you got
That's very
better?
true, Mark. I have gotten a lot better. Over the last few months, I have been revisiting a place in my past that I didn't ever want to go back to. I spent 5 years in oil and gas. I spent 5 years on an oil rig, and it's highly considered to be one of, I think, the top 5 most dangerous jobs in the world. And one of the things I remember about this is we had essentially a library that was in it was called a doghouse. It was where our supervisor basically lived, but there was this large library, and it was just full of binder after binder, probably 30 to 40 binders with 100 to 200 SOPs in each one. And the SOPs in the oil field, first of all, you will find an SOP for literally everything, to a point where it felt very exaggerated. There was an SOP for how to properly use the restroom. And that's the best one I can.
Is it keep the lid up or keep the lid down if it's all men on the oil rig?
It was keep the lid up. And there was an SOP for how to make Gatorade, because back then we used powdered Gatorade, but there was an SOP for how to make Gatorade. And I remember thinking, this is the most ridiculous decision. Why would you paid somebody good money to sit down and write how to make Gatorade? But in the oil field, everything was heavily documented, everything, because each of those SOPs were literally written in blood. Each SOP existed because somebody was performing this activity, and while they were performing this activity, somebody got seriously injured. And that was a really difficult concept to wrap my head around then. And then after I left that industry, I never wanted to look back. But now here I am thinking about, why did they have such a vast catalog of SOPs? Why did they have all of these things documented? And for them, it was to ensure the highest quality of safety to reduce people from getting injured. So now I'm looking back on that catalog and going, that is something that I need to emulate for a different reason, right? But there was a lot of value in that, because no matter what it was, everybody knew if you are about to perform this task, it is documented. No, that task probably isn't documented. Why would making Gatorade be documented? I'm telling you, if it needs to be done, it can be found in the library. And so now I want to be able to create that for SD Tech. No matter how silly it seems, it's something that we do on a routine basis. Why do we need this written out? Because we want to hire people that don't do this on a routine basis.
Yeah.
I want to be able to offer our model to individuals who haven't spent their life learning about technology. And the only way they can successfully do that is by having super strong documentation.
So why did you decide to, because it's interesting why you decided to go for your growth model as a franchise?
It is interesting. At the point that we settled on franchising our business model, we were actually talking about three or four different campaign strategies. We were discussing opening up our own second shop, if you will, and hiring somebody and then managing them remotely. We had discussed just hiring additional sales representatives who were local to that market so that we had in-person sales. We discussed a few different ways. And honestly, I believe that a really important factor in us deciding to franchise was a conversation that existed between Wes and one of his previous business partners. About 10 years ago now, Wes formed a second business with three of his friends, and it was another MSP. They came together, they worked together for about a year and a half. There was some differences in vision, and Wes stepped away, came back to doing SD Tech full time. Those three ex-business partners are still very close friends of the company. Technically, they're probably our strongest competition in San Antonio. They're our closest friends. We go to the movies once every other month. We never miss a DC or Marvel movie. We all go together. We have dinner. So Wes and these guys were at an F1 race, and while they were there, one of the three individuals said they brought up franchising MSPs and how there's only 4 successful MSPs that have ever franchised. And one of these individuals said, yeah, I think it's a really dumb idea. And Wes felt really challenged. And he was like, why do you think it's dumb? Why? And then so they started going back and forth, and all it was friendly banter in the beginning. And then he came back afterwards and he was like, Shane, Michael said the following. And I was like, okay, why are you telling me this? And he was like, do you think it's dumb? And I was like, no, I think it's super challenging. I think that there's a reason why there's only been a handful of MSPs who have successfully franchised. And I'm not even saying that they have become a successful franchisor. It's just getting their business model to a point where it is easy to replicate. And so then the two of us started discussing it. And then I remember going, what is the biggest challenge with opening up an MSP? And the biggest challenge with opening up an MSP is you have to have a vast array of technical knowledge in order to support a business from top down. And the majority of MSPs don't even offer a full suite of products. Most won't do like VoIP or support printers. Everybody has a couple of things that they leave off the table. And we pride ourselves on doing all of the things all at once. We want to make it easy for a business owner. So I was like, that's the most difficult challenge. So then it went from being this really silly conversation between friends of saying why it's not possible to going, what if we made it possible? What if we took this most difficult challenge and took that off the table? Mm-hmm. The tech industry is one of the fastest growing industries, and it's very sustainable. Tech and medicine, right? Those are the two that you're basically guaranteed a livelihood. And I was like, right, but it's difficult to get into either one of those industries because you have to have such a strong background. So then we focused on removing the hurdle of the technical knowledge. And that's one of our biggest pieces. But yeah, that's how we got there, Mark. It was
Amazing.
just because of some back and
A
forth between
throwaway
friends
comment.
saying, yeah,
Shane, would you say you're entrepreneurial?
I think so. Between this conversation and looking back when I was 15, I remember riding in the back of a school bus, and me and a friend of mine, uh, we were talking about what it would be like to not be dirt poor and riding a school bus. And she asked me, she was like, "What do you want to do?" I was like, "I want to eventually be an artist or a musician, but I think that I would really like to open up a entertainment complex that had a skate park, a music venue, and a tattoo shop." And she looked at me and she was like, "Oh man, that would be really cool." And we're 15 years old. And I was like, that would be really cool. And there's nothing like that exists. And now, as a business minded adult, I understand that there's a ton of insurance issues with having
Yeah.
those three things together. But yeah, I was 15 years old and thinking about how to pull together my hobbies in a way that would present a fun opportunity for other individuals that they would enjoy going to, that I could make a livelihood off of.
Amazing. And something that's since we started this conversation, and I wasn't going to go there, but I'm going to bring you all the way back to joining SD Tech. So that first conversation with Wes, what was that like? So he's embedded in the business, empire builder. You had some experience, you had other experiences. Just, and I know we're flicking back to the start again, but I'm just interested, that first conversation, your engineering mindset, his entrepreneurial mindset, you come together. What was that first conversation like?
So the very first conversation, Mark, was really interesting. We didn't sit down to discuss job. He didn't have an opportunity. I didn't apply for a position. I was actually coaching a longtime friend of mine, um, a guy I had known since high school. He had been making some really bad life decisions and was not in a good, he wasn't in a good spot, and he wanted to better himself. So I had offered him to move out of the small town where he was living and come to San Antonio. I offered him a place to stay, and I was trying to help him find a job, assisting him in getting his life back together.
Yeah.
And he ended up working at SD Tech. And at that point in time, I didn't know what SD Tech was. I had no interest in knowing what SD Tech was. What I knew is that this was an employment opportunity for a guy that I was trying to assist. And over about 6 months, he built up some good tenure there, and he was building good relationships. He was one of the three other employees, and he fell in love with the admin. And he just fell in love with her. And he was like, "Shane, you have to come meet this girl. You have to come meet this girl. You have to come meet this girl. You have to come." And I was like, "Bro, just calm down." And so finally he wore me down and he was like, "Come meet her." And I was like, "Where is y'all's office?" And he's, "Oh, we work out of the owner's home." And I was like, "You don't even work there. You work out of the house most of the time. You do remote work." And he was like, "Yeah, come meet her." And so finally I went and to meet her. And so I'm meeting the administrative assistant, and she was pretty cool. And while I was there, Wes came in, and Wes looked at his employee, who typically was a remote employee, and I immediately saw the look on Wes's face, and it was a look of, I need to talk to this man, and he's here. And I was like, "Oh, you want to have a conversation that's probably not going to be great." And then Wes looked at me, and he was like, "Who are you? And why are you in my house?" And then he looked back at his employee. And so Wes started talking to his employee, and he was coaching him. And then I chimed in and I sided with Wes, and I was like, "Hey, Alex, these are the things that I've also been talking to you about and coaching you on, and telling you, like, if you make these types of adjustments, you'll see improvement in your work." And Wes looked at me and he was, "Who are you?" And so we started talking. And at that point in time, I had worked. So I mentioned that I was in oil and gas. When I left that industry, I took about 12 months off of work. I cashed out my 401k. I had been working away from home a lot. I spent time with my wife and my kids, and I got reacquainted with my hobbies. And then when it was time for me to look for work again, I didn't want to go back to an industry I already knew. So I got into the tech space. I started off at an entry level role. 5 years later, I left as a senior operations manager. I left that company and went and worked for another company, and it was all corporate lifestyle. So I was about 10 years into the corporate lifestyle and realizing this isn't what I want to do. I've been leading large teams and I had a lot of accomplishments that made me proud, but I wasn't consistently happy.
Right.
And so I had stepped away again. And my wife, who I've been with for 15 years now, is extremely supportive. She said, if you're ready to step away, take a few months and let's figure out what you actually want to do. So I was 3 months into taking a step back. I was coaching my friend. I had him trying to help him out. And I was 90 to 95% of the way through a business plan of my own. And I was considering opening up a esports bar and grill with similar to a regular sports bar, but looking at esports. And it was, so that's where I was at. And so Wes was asked me, he was like, what do you do? And I was like, right now I do nothing. And he was like, so you don't have a job? And I was like, yeah, but you need to understand, I'm not looking for a job. That's not where I'm at. And so he asked me, what's your background? And he's just very pointed. And he's like, what's your background? And I was like, okay, I'm in this guy's house. I'm just going to answer his questions. So we started talking and he looked at his employee, my friend, and he asked Alex, he was like, how come you've never told me about this guy? And Alex was like, I didn't think that there was a reason to. And I was wearing an Archer shirt. I don't know if you're familiar with Archer, the animated television show.
Sorry, no, I'm not.
It's an animated show. It's very adult oriented. And Wes looked at my shirt. He's like, you like Archer and you're into tech? He was like, what else do you do? And so we just started talking. And he asked me if I would go have lunch with him. And I went and had lunch with him. And he was telling me about the background of SD Tech. He was telling me that he had been in business for 20 plus years and that everything was basically homegrown. He was telling me about his clientele and how he had expanded and that his clientele was heavily relationship based. And so I asked him a few questions that were important to me. I said, do you have a sales team? And he said, no. And I said, and how many active clients do you have? And he told me. And I was like, how many employees do you have? And he said, 3 other employees. And I was like, so you've grown this basically by yourself over this amount of time. And I I liked what he was doing. I liked who he was as a person. And there was a spark between us that is really hard to explain, Mark. Like it, we became best friends over a couple of hours. We had really similar vision. And I remember stepping away from our conversation and calling my wife and telling her, I was like, hey, so this would be an opportunity for me to essentially be running my own business, but I don't have to go through the headache of starting my own business.
Yeah.
And so she met him too. And yeah, so we decided to work together. When he hired me, he was like, I don't have a role for you. And I said, honestly, I don't know what I can do for you. So how about we just start by me getting acquainted with the business, figure out who you are, and then we'll figure it out. And yeah, I would say the rest is history. We've been able to
Amazing.
make some amazing things happen together.
What a great story. Thank you for sharing that with me. Look, we're coming to the end of the interview. I ask the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quick-fire questions. They don't need a quick-fire answer. First question is, what's the best decision that you made?
Just in general?
Just general. What's the best decision?
So I would have to say that the best decision is my wife. She's been my strongest partner for 15 plus years. We were amazing. She's my best friend. She's my biggest supporter. She's fantastic. Without her, I wouldn't be where I am today. I can't imagine another person who would have been comfortable with me taking 2 pretty large breaks in my life to reevaluate things and figure out what I wanted to do. And yeah, she's been amazing. More recently, outside of that, in my professional career, I'd say the best decision I've made is taking a chance with a small business where a guy didn't even know what type of opportunity he was going to offer me, and then taking the chance to figure out whether or not it could work.
Amazing. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
The best piece of advice I've been given, I have now probably given myself out to others 1,000 times, and that's that there's power in partnerships. Don't hesitate to leverage the relationships that you have. And when I say leverage, I don't mean reach out and use people, but leverage those relationships. If there's something that somebody's really good at and you need some assistance with it, ask. Typically, when you're asking for help, you're humbling yourself a bit, and people are usually pretty reasonable and want to help out other individuals. And if another individual feels like they're contributing to your success, usually things are going to go pretty well. And in return, offer your assistance to the people around you. I believe heavily in community and relationships. I love where I live. I love giving back to our city. And it all starts with the power of partnerships.
Amazing. Who's helped you most in your career? Not your business partner, not your wife.
That's fair. Very fair, because that definitely would have been in the top two. Outside of that, the person who's helped me most in my career would have been a mentor from probably 10 years ago. He was the vice president of a company that I worked for, and he was willing to have very uncomfortable conversations with me. He's the guy that helped me dig into my own mindset more and helped me understand that I do have a bit of an engineering mindset. He was an individual who helped me understand that sometimes hiring the right person for a position doesn't mean hiring the best person for a position, and that you sometimes have to be very strategic in your hirings, and there's a whole philosophy that just goes behind that. And he took the time to really help me understand things, and I believe that truly helped push me forward in a way that he saved me probably 5 to 10 years.
Tell me about a regret that you have.
Earlier, you asked me not to say yes. This is
Yes.
going to be a time where I say no. I don't have any regrets. I look back, we were talking about my childhood earlier. My childhood wasn't great. There were things that were traumatic at best and experiences that I think the majority of people would like to say that if they had an opportunity to remove experiences that they would. And I put in a lot of effort at looking at everything that's happened in my life and finding why there's benefit to it. So I can truly say I don't have any regrets, Mark.
Okay. I usually push people on that because
Yeah.
I get that quite a lot, especially with entrepreneurs. I'm a sum of all of my experiences. If something went wrong that time, it made me learn from it to another experience. I'm going to push you on it. I'm sorry. So, is there ever been a situation where you've spoken to someone harshly, you've dealt with a situation badly, you made
Oh, no, you
an
can stop
idea?
right there. That you could stop right there. That's fair. So I think when you ask that question, it triggers this like high level response that does, we are the sum of all of our efforts, good and bad. No, there are definitely some conversations where if I could walk back on conversations and been a little more gentle, taken a little bit more care. Yeah, I have delivered a lot of hard to handle, uncomfortable conversations. And I can't say that the majority of those were handled with a great amount of care, but especially earlier on, there were some where if I could go back and change some of those conversations, I definitely would.
Thank you for your honesty. I wanted to push you. I'm sorry. What are you most proud?
Mm. I think I'm most proud of seeing my siblings become successful in their lives. I know that we had a really rough go early on, and it can be a big hurdle to overcome. I know the efforts that I've put in to take negative situations and find the positives in them. And that's not easy for myself to do. And I know that it can be even more difficult for others to do. So the majority of my siblings have managed to turn out and have incredible lives. And that makes me feel pretty good.
Amazing. And what does legacy mean to you?
Not the same as it means to a lot of other people who are in our situations. I have a daughter of my own. I have two other children that I've raised. They're all incredibly important to me. And I know that a lot of entrepreneurs are looking to build something that they can pass on to their kids and make things better. I want for my children to find their own reason to be. So my legacy is mine, and it's not something that I'm looking to pass on. It's not something that I'm looking to have an empire that spans generations. I want to be happy and have the most positive impact on other individuals as possible. And that's where I believe it begins and ends for me.
I get that. And another question that I've been thinking about, and I'm going to ask this. So usually that's where we stop, and then I say, where can people find you? But I'm going to ask you one other question, which I've been thinking about for a while, and I'll try it here today with you, Shane. So you're a bit of a guinea pig here.
Nice.
Um, why do you do what you do?
It stems back to the wanting to have a positive impact on the individuals around me. Our life, especially right now in this day and age, and the things going on in the world, it can be dark. It can be really dark sometimes. And I make a genuine effort, more often than not, to help provide some type of positivity, so to be some type of light for the individuals around me, because I know all too well how bad things can feel at times. And we don't have a lot of time. I mentioned I believe that community is really important. So that's it's for others, for myself, to just try and have a genuinely positive impact.
What a great answer. Thank you so much. And lastly, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you or learn more about your business?
If you want to learn more about our business, sd-tech.net is our website. You can find the majority of the nice information about what it is we do. You can learn more about the franchising opportunities if that interests you. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's a very boring profile. There's nothing amazing happening there. The most important thing about it is it's a great way to connect with me. You can get in touch via there, Facebook, Instagram, any of the ways. I love building new relationships, partnerships, and yeah, that's the best ways.
Thank you so much, Shane. It's been such a delight speaking to you. You're an absolute legend. I think you're one of my favorite guests. So thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
your time.
I really
Cheers.
appreciate that, Mark.
I really hope you've enjoyed that content. It's a really fascinating interview that I've done there. So please do, if you are enjoying this content, please do give it a like. Please do give a subscribe. It'd be really good to boost the subscriptions. It really makes a difference to the algorithm in YouTube. So thank you for that. If you do hit subscribe, hit the bell icon and you'll get all of the content. You'll get notified when all the content is available. Thank you so much for your time. It's really appreciated. Thanks a lot.